taking a look at a particularly interesting question right as holiday season is around the corner. So in a few weeks from now, you're going to be packing up your bags possibly. You're going to be traveling with your family to a different part of either the country or the rest of the world. And we thought that it's so important to look at a crucial aspect of travel planning, one that's often overlooked until it's too late. We're talking a little bit about travel insurance today. And the reason we thought this was such an important issue to look at was, and you would have heard about this in the news, hundreds and hundreds of flights in the recent past either getting delays or getting held up altogether because of a new threat in the aviation industry. This is the problem of bomb threats. You receive a threat of some kind, or aviation companies will receive a threat of some kind, and travelers who are either already on the plane or about to board are left wondering if there's any kind of compensation. If they're going to be delayed, will they receive any kind of money out of it? And we thought today is the right time to take a look at what kind of travel insurance policies exist. So we thought, A, it's important to look at this question. Does travel insurance cover this kind of problem at all? What does travel insurance even cover? Does it cover weather-related delays, for example? Does it cover if an airline decides that an incoming flight is late, therefore their flight can't take off? These kind of problems plague our flight. So we wanted to take a look at what answers exist and what answers don't exist. Earlier this year, in April, the DGCA said that there had been an increase of about 30% in the number of flights that are seeing delays across the industry. So today's discussion is a very, very important one. We thought, as we told you a little earlier, that we'd have experts come on the show, break it down for us, and tell us if their thoughts on domestic travel and domestic travel insurance are the same as their thoughts on international travel insurance, or whether those are two different beasts that need to be broken down differently. Let's dive into all of the nuances right here on the show. Joining us to bring us everything when it comes to what this is will be a specialist. We'll go to him in just a second, but some of the key questions. Is domestic travel insurance truly necessary? Is it a waste of money? What qualifies as a valid claim, and how do you go about actually making that claim if you need to make it? And how do insurers behind the scenes assess the validity of bomb threats? What's the difference between a cancellation due to a credible threat versus something like hoaxes, which is what we're starting with? Should we opt for comprehensive coverages? What do those comprehensive coverages actually look like? What's the fine print you should be reading for? All of that and more comes here. Mahavir Chopra joins us on the show. He's the founder of Beshak Insurance. He's going to be shedding light on all of this for us right now. Mahavir, good morning. Thank you for joining us bright and early on the show, for breaking it down for our viewers. Can we just ask you first off, tell us, and this is just a basic question to get us started, domestic travel insurance, what does it cover? What does it not cover usually?
Right. So there are two types of domestic travel insurance. First of all, one which you can buy on your own from an insurance company's website, and the other which is available through these travel portals, right? If you're buying a ticket online, then the travel portal will also give you an option to opt into a travel insurance kind of a cover, right? This will typically cost you around 450 rupees. And this is a cover that will probably offer you covers related to trip delay, trip cancellation, missed flights, and a lot of such stuff. The coverage that it will provide you is quite a comprehensive coverage in terms of whatever delays or missed baggages or lost baggages that you could think of. Covers related to trip, and covers related to probably anything related to, let's say, a hospitalization or an accident that happens is part of the personal accident kind of a cover that they offer you as part of the overall travel package insurance cover that they would offer you. The cover that the insurance company offers on its own is a very different kind of a cover. It is largely a cover that would give you, a coverage for, let's say, you missing a departure, right? And apart from that, there could be covers related to hospitalization and a disability or an accident or an evacuation, which is basically where if you are in a different city and you need to be brought back to your city so that you are basically taken care of in the city you are from, then those things are covered.
Okay, so before we go any further, we thought we had to ask you how many Indians are actually going for it? Because when you're buying a plane ticket and you're actually deciding whether or not you should tick that box of the insurance, this is often a question I wonder, am I in the majority? Am I in the minority if I'm choosing not to go for that? What are the numbers like?
Right. So actually, earlier this kind of a cover was basically made mandatory by insurance by online travel agents. Basically, they used to allow IRDA used
It
to
should be
allow them to
pre-checked.
have a pre-check, and because of the pre-check, a lot of people used to end up buying this kind of a cover. But today, after that thing has been removed, now the regulator has said that you cannot have a pre-check. You need to allow the customer to opt in. I think around 25, what I've been hearing, there are no real public numbers about this, but the uptake, what is said in the industry is around 20%. 80% people don't opt for it. Largely because if you look at the price versus the benefit that a customer gets, there is a dichotomy at that time. So you're paying around 450 rupees. And let's say if there is a delay in baggage, or let's say if a baggage is lost, or there is a trip delay of more than 2 hours, then you will end up getting a flat 1000 bucks, 1000 rupees. That's it. So paying 50 rupees maximum, the kind of risks that you are seeing when you are probably taking a flight is a delay, right? For a delay, you are going to pay around 450 rupees and end up finally getting a flat 1000 rupees in case that delay actually happens, right? So a lot of people then, take a trade off of, looking at the cost. Already you're paying for a lot of other add-ons. So from that perspective,
Right. There's a
uh,
lot of internet talk around exactly this, that today flying has become so expensive. Even if and I'm talking primarily of domestic, of course, international is a whole other battle. But on domestic, you're paying for your flight, and then there's so many other stages. A seat at this point can also be an add-on that is considerable when you take all the numbers into consideration. So it has become a expensive affair. I want to ask you, Mahavir, and I want to ask you this question because we actually haven't answered it for our audiences yet. The hoax question. So if, for example, the flight that you're on has received a hoax call of some kind and gets delayed by a few hours, is that covered by insurance?
yes, it will get covered if you've taken this insurance that we spoke about. It basically says that a delay of more than 2 hours will be covered. But the final payment that you will get typically would be in the range of a flat amount of, like I said, 1000 bucks or something like that. So that is how it will be. So it can get covered. You have to be very careful when you're buying the policy, because the policy may not have this cover, or may have a cover which has a very large amount of delay before which it will start paying. So from these perspectives, when you look at all these things together, yes, it can be covered, but there could be fine print.
So let's ask you this then, Mahavir. When your own family is opting for flying in, it's not a
Right,
situation, say, where you are buying the tickets for them. Say another
right.
family member is going about buying the tickets. What's your advice for them? And I want to ask you this because I want our audiences to come to know some of the secrets someone who understands the insurance industry, the travel insurance in particular, actually goes for. So what do you tell them to look out for when they're picking their travel insurance, or they're on a website like Make My Trip and they're choosing to see if they should tick for it? Is there a fine print you suggest they read first?
Right. So there are two aspects to this, right? Meaning, although it's not part of insurance, but most OTAs, which is the travel agents, online travel agents, now offer something which is like an additional cover, right? Which is their own, which is not an insurance cover, which allows you to cancel flights and not having to pay for the cancellation fee, right? So that is something that typically I opt with if, for my family, if it's a flight which is going to happen, let's say it's a planned flight, like if it's a flight after 2 months and we don't know what could happen that time, then in those situations, I do take that additional, benefit that is available by paying a little more to ensure that, if there is a cancelled, if I have to cancel the flight, I don't have to pay more. I don't have to pay the cancellation fee and take another flight. Or if I want to change dates, I don't have to pay a lot. It then allows me to do that on my on the same cost, right? The other is the travel insurance part. In that, basically, I usually, in case of domestic travel, do not suggest people to buy a cover, because, like I said, in my view, and it's a personal view, when I look at it from a cost benefit, I don't see that kind of value, right? So the cost is quite prohibitive in my view, 450 rupees, versus when you compare it to the benefit, it does not look like a great deal for me. So typically, I wouldn't at all opt for it in most cases. Uh, at the same time, if it's a foreign travel, then it's a mandatory thing. The foreign
Okay,
travel.
wait. So, Mahavir, we'll get to that in a second. But I
Sure.
really want to stop for a second and summarize for our audiences because that's a huge takeaway
Absolutely.
that you are saying as someone who runs Beshak Insurance, in fact, so another insurance organization. You are saying that you do not opt, and even for your family, in most cases, when it's domestic travel, you don't actually opt for that travel insurance. You don't tick that tick box over there, which is huge for all of us. I wasn't doing it either. It's good to know that the professionals aren't doing it either. Let's go in now very quickly, though, to international insurance, because that's a place where even when you and I were talking a little earlier to, understand what it was that you had to say on this topic, you said international travel, insurance has to be taken. It's not a question. And you actually said that there it's a whole different ball game. Can you illustrate that for us?
Yeah, so actually, international travel, the insurance product is a very, very comprehensive product. It actually cannot be called a travel insurance product. It's a product that covers you for almost like it's like a it's like six, seven policies inside one policy, right? So it covers you for the trip. It also covers your baggage, the documents in your baggage. It will cover also the time that you are there in the specific country that you have gone to, like for, let's say, even treatments that are required, or if there is some other kind of risk that has occurred. Like, for example, if you've, let's say, hired a car and you end up, damaging or injuring someone, right? Damaging a property or injuring someone, that also gets covered. So it's a very, very detailed cover that basically most insurance companies today give. So, from a point of view of when you're in a foreign land, and typically the cost of healthcare in most of the countries that Indians visit is very, very high. You cannot be on your own. In India, when you have a domestic, when you're traveling domestic, you already, if you have a health insurance and you have a term insurance and a personal accident insurance, that would take care of around 50-60% of the risks that you basically are exposed to. Of course, not the trip related risks. But when you're traveling abroad, your regular health insurance does not cover you for traveling
Right.
abroad. So that's why it becomes super important for you to have an insurance for the entire trip and all the risks around it.
But Mahavir, if I could ask you to give our audiences clean sort of takeaways here when it comes to looking at travel insurance when they are traveling abroad, what should the things they're looking out for be?
Right. So one of the most important things is to customize, right? Do not just go by whatever someone is offering you. Let's say you're buying it from a travel agent or you're buying it even online. Just don't go by pre-packaged offers that are available. If as much as possible, try to probably plan a little earlier and see what are the kind of coverages that are available, and then look at it. I'll just give a quick example that if, let's say, I'm traveling with someone who has an illness, right, or a disease, but he is now permitted to travel by the doctors and the medical fraternity. Uh, there are policies that would cover these illnesses if there is a life-threatening condition that happens, right? And then there are policies which don't cover it. So if I'm basically buying a policy for someone like that, then I will be careful about customizing the policy to ensure that it has this kind of a cover, right? The other thing is basically to understand the coverage, right? So if you're traveling to, let's say, a Southeast Asian country, you could probably buy a smaller coverage. But if you're traveling to
Yeah.
US, right, or you're traveling to even Canada or UK, where the healthcare expenses are super high, there you obviously need a much higher cover. So I'll just give a quick example. So a $25,000 cover, it's usually in dollars. The cover is in usually in dollars.
Right.
So $25,000 cover in, let's say, a Thailand or a Singapore, or let's say any other Indonesia kind of country could be good enough. But let's say if you're traveling to US, and typically your travel for US will be for a longer duration also, uh, it should be at least 2.5 lakh dollars, right? So it should be almost like 10 times the cover that you take for a Southeast Asian country because of the difference in the expenses. The other aspect is to understand that a lot of these coverages that are available in two types, right? And this is something which is a very small nuance, but can be really, really useful. Some policies give you covers like trip delay, or let's say baggage delay or baggage loss, in a format which is a reimbursement of expenses, right? So, for example, if my baggage is delayed for a particular number of hours, right? the insurer will say whatever money you have spent, you need to provide me bills for those expenses, and I will reimburse you for that inconvenience related expenses that you had to incur. But then there are now better policies that are available, which basically give you a flat amount, right? Which
Okay.
will say, okay, we'll just give you $150 or $200 for the inconvenience beyond a number of hours, right? It's a very, very important thing because, when you're traveling abroad, managing bills is the last thing you want to do, right?
Right.
And usually I've seen friends and family losing their bills, right? Meaning they don't have, and then they don't end up claiming, or they have lost something that an insurer wanted. So that is the second thing. And the third and most important thing is when you're buying a cover, understand the deductibles in the cover very well. And I know I'm using a technical word, but because it will be written that way, is what I need to explain it. Deductible means is that whenever there is a claim that you need to make, a certain amount of money will have to be paid by you, and only after that an insurer will come into picture. So, for example, in case of a medical treatment that is required,
Right.
or a dental treatment that is covered in, let's say, a country abroad, the deductible is $100, right? So it basically says that any expense till $100 you will have to pay on your own, and only after that the insurer will start paying, right? So you understand deductibles very well. So all the covers that are available in a travel insurance have deductibles, and you need to understand and be able to accept or understand it properly, absorb it properly, before you take the policy, because that's the place where most of the people end up feeling cheated when there is a claim. Like, I give an example. So for example, in trip delay, or let's say a baggage loss or a baggage delay, actually,
Right.
uh, there is a limit like which says that if your delay is more than 12 hours, then we will pay, right? If it is less than 12 hours, then we will not pay. And then there are some insurance companies which reduce this to 6 hours. So when you're taking a cover, just don't look at that, okay, baggage delay is covered, but also look at the deductible, which will tell you from what time it will get covered, right? So these are the important things that you need to very carefully understand. One fourth bonus point is that fill the proposal form on your own. So you will have an application form that you have to fill in when you're
Right.
buying
Getting, yeah, yeah.
it in a lazy manner, or just to complete a form. There are certain very, very important questions, most importantly questions related to medical history and lifestyle, which is basically if you're a smoker, non-smoker, and those kind of questions. Ensure that you answer those questions well, because at the time of claim these questions will be cross-checked against the real information about you. And that's a large reason for claim rejections, specifically medical treatment. So these four things I would say are very, very important.
So when it comes to international travel, it really seems like your central point has been go about the process very, very carefully. And I think
Right.
particularly from the health aspect, because when a health emergency is happening abroad, it's your health insurance, or rather your travel insurance that covers health, that can really kick in depending on if you followed it, filled it in carefully, followed the right procedure and picking the right insurance. So your point is this is something that needs to be done very carefully. Can I just ask you, Mahavir, to take our audiences back for one last question, right to where we started this conversation, which was the
Yeah.
question of domestic travel. One of the pieces of advice you gave our audiences, and I want to take it back here because most of our audiences are definitely doing some kind of domestic travel in the next few months. For them, you've said insurance is not where you should look to protect yourself when it comes to flight delays. But we know that flight delays are a rising problem across the industry. So I want to ask you, do you have any suggestions in general on how one can better prepare themselves in such a situation then? If it's
Right.
not travel insurance they can look to anymore?
Yeah. So one thing is, I think being aware of the protocols that are basically laid out by DGCA, right? Being aware of them is very important in my view. DGCA is basically the regulator for airlines, right? And they basically are people who will basically lay out guidelines for airlines in terms of when they are supposed to compensate the passenger, and when they are supposed to basically probably give a new ticket, or basically put them in a hotel accommodation. So typically, what I remember, I'm not very updated about this, but let's say if there is a late night flight and if it gets delayed, let's say it's a flight after 8 p.m. to let's say in the morning, early morning, and if it gets delayed, then the above 6 hours, actually, yeah, if it gets delayed above 6 hours, then the airline is supposed to give you hotel accommodation, right? So know these rules, right? Know these things so that you can actually claim this from the airline. A lot of airlines will not obviously want you to know this, or probably it would be in the fine print. But if you're aware of it, you can actually claim it from the airline itself. So that's one thing that I typically do suggest that people
People to
should.
do. Read the fine print, and it's actually similar to the advice we were giving people earlier, just the importance of passing through the policies themselves. Thank you, Mahavir, for giving us that advice. For you, our TBC audiences, we're going to continue to have experts join